Yes, it Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.
Welcome to another Donnybrook. Thanks for joining us. Lots to talk about and a great guest on the second half when Rhonda Ham-Nabrugi joins us, Airport Director for Lambert International. But first, let's meet the panelists who comprise this program, starting with Wendy Wiese, 50% of the Jennifer and Wendy Show on KTRS. Mr. Bill McClellan from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, Ray Hartmann from rawstory.com, the Riverfront Times, and the Big 550, KTRS, and Mr. Alvin Reid, who's with the St. Louis American. And I guess, Bill, we're going to start with you as we're getting messages from every corner as to what we should do. The health director for the city of St. Louis said we should all stay home except for going to school or actually going to work, I guess, and maybe errands and the grocery store and maybe the doctor. Meanwhile, Washington University is going to start classes virtually on the 18th, while St. Louis University will be studying in person. Well, how do you feel about that with St. Louis University with in-person instruction, WashU online?
Well, I think in-person instruction is so much better than online. And as long as vaccinations are required and booster shots, I'm in favor of in-person. And I found it interesting that the SLU said that all in-person events will be canceled until at least February 13th, except for things at Chaffetz Arena. And it so happens that I have a very good seat for the Saturday, the sort of seats I don't normally get for Saturday's game against Fordham. So I have had to make a big decision on that. And since they require vaccination, proof of vaccination to get in, and my seat's a very good one, I've decided that I'm going to go ahead and ignore the city health director and listen to the president of SLU.
Go Billikens.
Go Billikens.
It's a slippery slope.
I still believe that Dr. Pacello might change his mind. I think this is a very fluid situation, and every single day we're seeing more organizations cancel events or postpone events. And I think the more we see these hospitalization rates increase, and you hear that the frontline workers at the hospitals, and you hear that the administrators are being begged by the frontline, and the administrators in turn are begging public officials to do something, I would not be surprised if Dr. Pacello changes his mind and errs, if you will, on the side of caution in the next 72 hours.
I think Wendy's upon probably the most underrated point in this entire pandemic is we're just not accustomed to something that is unknown, something that is so fluid and that really changes. And so, when these poor health officials all over the country are dealing with a moving target. And every time they change, people say, oh, you're flip-flopping or you're wishy-washy or you're whatever. And the facts change. And I think you're right. I mean, I think Fred Pacello is, he is the institution itself should be the one making the decision, but it's kind of hard to comment on it when you don't know if their facts change next week, they're going to change.
Well, I think you'd have to decide what you are going to do and what you aren't going to do. Okay. And, the Missouri system made a horrible decision to just say you don't have to wear a mask in class and inside of buildings and things like that. That's hideous. But they made their decision, okay? And I think the real tragedy of it is, all right, Columbia is what it is, but you're making that decision for the entire system. So this means University of Missouri St. Louis, you don't have to wear a mask. This means some of these other the other state schools that are in places where nowhere near the majority of people are vaccinated. It's going to hit there first, but it's going to get to Columbia. And at the end, I guess whoever the chair or whatever, or the curators board says like, well, and we see what's happened and then we'll change it. Well, I can tell you what's going to happen. COVID is going to surge on all of your campuses, and you will find some reason to still not do the right thing. That is my guess. And that's
well, when Dr. Anthony Fauci said what 17, 18 hours ago, he said Omicron is going to eventually get all of us. You know, that was talking about the high rate of transmissibility, and it sounds like they've never seen anything even remotely close to this contagious. So the folks who still think that they should be able to, go to do whatever they want. There's a disconnect there, and I don't even want to.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised. I agree with that. I think I was surprised at the UM Board of Curators. I didn't quite understand that, because I like to let the administrators decide. But in the case of St. Louis University, they're going to require boosting. They're going to require masks. They're going to have regular surveillance. And I noticed that my alma mater, Boston College, another Jesuit school, they're doing the same thing. And so is my daughter's school, Fordham, another Jesuit school. So it actually might be a Jesuit thing.
Charles, how could you say you didn't understand what the curators did? Isn't it pretty obvious what they did? I mean, they're all of a sudden, as I say, on one hand, want to have local autonomy, particularly for a private university like SLU, to be an anti-mask message from an institution that depends on its funding for the anti-mask legislature. I don't think there's any mystery here.
And well, you're probably
it's
right.
Really immoral. It's not even amoral. It's immoral what the Board of Curators did, and it's purely to pander to Republican legislators.
Okay, let's move on to another topic, and we'll go to you, Alvin Reid, on this one, where it was announced yesterday by Mitchell Rosansky, the Archbishop of the Archdiocese of St. Louis, along with the head of the International Institute, former guest of our program, and Todd Schnook of Schnook's Supermarkets, and Jerry Schlichter, local attorney, that there's going to be a massive outreach to Afghan refugees around the country, encouraging them to move to St. Louis. They're going to pull out all the stops, Alvin, 200 laptop computers, coding classes for the Afghani refugees. They're going to help them with housing. There's going to be an Afghani Chamber of Commerce, a newspaper for the community, and they really hope to make the St. Louis the place to be. And they're hoping to replicate what we did for Bosnians in the mid-1990s. How do you feel about this?
Well, I was not here, when this happened with the Bosnians. There are just, I'll say this, that within the city of St. Louis, in this region, there are people that are refugees from, economic settlement, refugees from fairness, refugees from a solid education, and all the parties involved do their part. The Schnook family, Jerry Schlichter, all great people. But I always think to myself, we want to help people. The charity starts at home, which is a different, kind of meaning than it was when that phrase was coined. But, I always think that there is another, I don't want to say another country, but there's another society that is not in tune with most of St. Louis, and it's right here. You don't have to go find them. They're right here. But God bless the effort. But please never forget that we aren't, a cosmopolitan place. We aren't. We got our own problems right here that we need to fix.
And what is it you always say, Bill? Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And I know that's what you're saying, Alvin. Mm-hmm. I just think that this is, I think it's as important for the city of St. Louis as it is for the Afghan community. Charlie, you mentioned what happened with Bosnian refugees in the mid-90s, and to read that St. Louis has the largest Bosnian population outside of Europe. I mean, that is staggering. And so that is the kind of thing. I love the part of the initiative that deals with creating communities where they feel comfortable, they feel kinship with the people around them. I love the part about the liaison who can help them kind of navigate, negotiate in their native tongue and that kind of thing. I think it sounds like, oh gosh, this is fantastic of St. Louis to offer this. I think it's fantastic for St. Louis. I think we have as much to gain as the Afghan community.
I came across a very interesting statistic. I was reading a book by Mark Kruger about the St. Louis Commune when the Communist Party took over the city for about 3 days in 1871. And in 1860, he wrote 59.7% of the population of St. Louis was foreign born. Almost 60% were born elsewhere. And I thought, we've lost that so dramatically. I mean, immigrants don't come here. Bosnians were an exception, but it'd be great to see the Afghanis become an exception.
Absolutely. But I tell you what, and this is as good citizenship gets in a lot of ways because of the need. We always talk about St. Louis is in decline. We need, to some extent to grow. But I'll tell you what, I think Alvin it's nice that Alvin was willing to make that statement because I don't think the two are mutually exclusive. And I know you're not saying they are. It would be nice to think about the fact that we could use a little more initiatives within intra immigration, if you will, or giving people some opportunities. But I mean, you can't. I know you're not saying this. I certainly it should be a source of pride. And I'll tell you this: the Bosnian Muslims' experience here has probably not been covered very well by us in the media because there's been some ups and downs and some migration within since they've been here, and we're not very well set up generally to cover really the intricacies of that story. I'll tell you who is a hero is the International Institute does some really cool work, but it's not as smooth as it isn't like, well, they came here and they settled. They actually settled and kind of resettled. So, I mean, there's a lot more to this story.
Okay, Ray, we'll stick with you. Let's go on to our third topic for this edition of Donnybrook. The St. Louis County Council is now mulling a pay raise. I think the members who serve St. Louis County make about $20,000 a year. There's one proposal by Ernie Tracus to take that up to $60,000 a year. What do you think if they do get a pay raise? Will it be enforceable?
Well, first of all, Ernie Tracus' streak of being wrong is, of course, intact, which is no news itself. I would say this: if we're going to pay the council, a lot of us in this business, when you're paid based on ratings, I think they probably deserve an increase. They've certainly made more news. I think, knowing them individually, I actually think they should get a pay increase. It's not because, and I know it's easy to beat up on them because they're politicians, but I mean, it's been a long time since they got one. And when you consider how much work they do, they should get something. It certainly shouldn't be $60,000, and it would have to be a modest increase, maybe stepped in, and it shouldn't be really that out of line with what county workers get. But having said that, their timing isn't good. I will say I don't think it's going to pass the voters, and I do think the voters should have to approve it.
Go ahead, Alvin.
Wendy.
Go ahead, Alvin. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm just saying this. All jobs technically, and I guess some wage increase is guaranteed, but based on job performance, especially over the last year and a half, but even less than that, really, absolutely not. And I think that most county residents, not the ones hollering and screaming, at the council meetings, not the council people who are obviously got agendas, but be they Republican, be they Democrat, I think they would say, listen, you can have your philosophical, political differences. I'd be willing to give you a raise because you haven't had one in a long time, but you cannot embarrass me. And the county council has been an embarrassment, and I'm not giving any pay increase to people who embarrass the employer. And, we in the county are the employer.
I don't think the county council has been an embarrassment. I think the interaction, I think you can make an argument that Sam Page has been as much of an embarrassment as the council.
No, the county council has been an embarrassment.
I don't think so. I don't agree with it. I think it's the interaction.
Page on one hand, Trachis on the other hand, Rita Days on one hand, Lisa Clancy on the other. That's embarrassing.
Cam
I
Page
did not
make
think
all
Rita
the
Days
decisions with the COVID money.
That's it.
Yeah.
I mean, giving up oversight. How can you say they're not an embarrassment, Ray?
I don't think they're an embarrassment.
Lisa Clancy, Ray?
No, I don't.
Ernie
I
Trachis?
disagree. I'll say Ernie.
Go down the roster.
Yeah, I just did.
No,
They're
I
5 for 5.
I think the only embarrassment on the county council is Ernie Trachis, honestly. I don't think any of the other 6 are embarrassing.
Oh, no.
I may not agree with him.
No. That's not fair to
I don't
Ernie
agree
Trachis.
with him.
And I don't care about fairness to Ernie Trachis, but
Ray,
that's
at
not
least
fair to
Ernie
Ernie Trachis.
Trachis.
Yeah,
And at
there's
least
no
Ernie
way.
Tra-
I'm sorry. Raise your hand if you've had a $60,000 sexual harassment.
Give me a break. Wait,
handoff.
no, wait.
I
I
didn't
no
talk like you're the
on
taxpayer's
masks.
advocate.
And then 5 months later, I'm yes on masks. Well, why did we go down that train?
Because
why did that freight train
I don't think
run
they should
over
be
the
embarrassed.
community?
By the way, I do not think they should get anything like 60,000. I think if you look at the amount of time and frankly the grief that they have to do individually, forget about your politics. We're talking Republicans, Democrats. I do not think it's unreasonable to say that $20,000 is pretty paltry for a county.
And Alvin, didn't your own father say don't begrudge someone a salary?
He did. And it's a true story.
What I thought was
I don't think he was talking about elected officials. I don't think.
What I thought was great was Ernie Trachis' legislative aide bringing in the numbers from Honolulu, Hawaii, and Montgomery County, Maryland, which I'm pretty sure is a suburb of Washington.
Oh my gosh!
Oh, it is.
I mean, that's.
I know, Tim. I'll tell you.
If you don't understand the differences or the apples and oranges, I mean that makes absolutely no sense. What I am, as a county resident, I would like to know why you run for office, why you run for any office, and then you complain about it. I do believe they should have a pay raise. It's been since 2005, not a $60,000 pay raise, that's for sure. But if you don't like the work, let somebody who is energized get in there. I realize it's changed. The whole world has changed.
That's like saying nobody that has a job should ask for a raise. I mean, that's all there. I guess.
No. These people ran for election.
I know
they made money to get the job. They talked about how much they wanted it, and it's not like a normal working person.
They're not getting. They're not complaining.
Based on
I don't know
everybody's
why I'm
life. All right, but based on everybody's life and career, there is nobody on the county council that's hurting for money. So
we don't know that.
What do you
but
got?
let me say this, guys.
My family.
Ray is absolutely right. Yes, I did say that. You know, you're not getting the pay raise for this bunch of elected officials because they're not going to be there forever. It's for the position, not for the individual.
But you have to judge based on who's sitting at the time.
Well, maybe they're getting paid by the word.
Can I say something?
I do
not think I don't agree, I should say, with Mark Harder and Tim Fisher, Republicans, but they bust their butts and they work hard, and the idea that we should judge them about whether we think they've done a good job by our politics. I think the position should pay more than 20. Okay. I think it's reasonable.
Well, I sound like a man that might run for county council one day.
No, I didn't say. I said.
We'll find out. Okay. Let's move on.
Right.
Wendy, there's a national story with St. Louis connections. It really wasn't that long ago. In fact, I talked to the woman when she was in Pennsylvania raising money for the homeless in St. Louis. Remarkable young gal in many ways. Mackenzie Fierston, formerly Mackenzie Morrison, who went from Whitfield to the University of Pennsylvania, an Ivy League school. And then you probably read about her in national publications, including our own papers here, that she got a Rhodes Scholarship in Cambridge, England. And the president of her school said, this is a first generation, low income, former foster care student. And the university was so proud of her. Well, then they found out later she really technically wasn't first generation. After all, her mother's a radiologist, so she had to have gone to college. She wasn't low income for most of her life because until her junior year, she was living with her mom, the radiologist, in a nice suburb. And she went to Whitfield, which is, $30,000 a year or so for tuition. And she was in foster care, but not her entire life. She started foster care her junior year in high school. So the issue went to the Rhodes Scholarship Committee, and they asked her to rescind her application, and she did. But now she's coming back. She's suing the University of Pennsylvania, which leaked this information to the Rhodes officials. And she's saying that she lost out after she was part of a wrongful death lawsuit against the University of Pennsylvania, and that this is a retaliation on the school's part. What do you think about this case? Do you have some sympathy or compassion in your heart for this gal from St. Louis?
It's too early to say whether I have any sympathy or compassion for her. I don't have much compassion for the institutions of higher learning, because I think two of the most important words that we all learn as adults is due diligence. And when you're talking about something like a Rhodes Scholarship, Bill Clinton, Chris Christopherson, two very polar examples, but still,
Eric Greitens.
This Eric Greitens, well, thank you, Bill. That's true too. But this is a life-altering award. And so I would check out every story. I would vet every source. I would vet, I just think it's sad, because there are a lot of people who really would have had that life-altering experience and done wonderful things with it. Clearly, there are holes in her story. To have gone to Whitfield, to have taken horseback riding lessons, at least according to one of the articles that I was reading about this. I think it's just too early to tell. I just thought the timing was kind of ironic with this whole Theranos trial and Elizabeth Holmes, because apparently it's very in vogue right now to fake it till you make it. And that saddens me, but maybe that's what was going on here. I have no idea.
Well, she checked all the boxes. She checked a lot of boxes. What I would like to know is what box got checked that she skated into this school without this going on. Because you're right, Wendy, the universities, what was it that got her this scholarship instead of whoever was like right behind her? Because no matter what anybody says, her being in kept one person from being out. Exactly. And I would like to know, who was that person who was out, and why did she get in?
Well, I think she got in because the narrative was that she got out of foster care, that she had couch surfed from one home to another, and she was first generation. Colleges look for that, and low income.
And I guarantee you, of people eligible for Rhodes Scholars that applied for it, there would be more than a handful that had even worse story.
What I found interesting about it is the way that when her story unraveled, and it was clear that she had, at the very least, exaggerated parts of it. She just doubled down. I mean, this is a post-fact world we live in, where you get caught because everything's on videotape. Dr. Khan saying he was jostled, the McCloskeys saying that the mob broke the gates, and videotape shows that didn't happen that way. People just forge ahead. And so this woman, instead of saying, well, okay, I did exaggerate that, I actually grew up in Chesterfield, instead she's defiant. She says that I'm outraged that they didn't believe me. I mean, she's a 21st century woman. And
yeah, and can I say something really, Char? And I agree with that. And I'll say this, point of personal privilege, I know Whitfield well, and I know it's kind of tangential to the story, but it's such a great institution, and their strong suit is ethics and integrity. And I hope people don't associate Whitfield with this, because I'll go as far as say I do not find her creditable. But I mean, as Wendy says, I guess we'll let the story play out. But
well, I understand what you're saying, but at the time of her application, she was in foster care, and she was taken from the home by the Department of Social Services, by the state, Division of Family Services, I guess it is. She was low income by virtue of being a foster child. And according to some definitions from the university's own website, she could be considered first generation. So,
Charlie, if you're going to say that, mention the fact that the case that the woman ended up having the mother had her, the criminal history or accusations completely expunged. And I think you got to mention that if you're going to say, well, she was taken into foster care.
Right. She was taken away because of her accusations.
Right. She was taken because of her accusations. After 3 years, they not only didn't find them to be creditable, but they took the unusual step of expunging the mother's records. So I'm just saying.
And this is a mother, you guys, who, as you notice, she's still pleading for her daughter and saying that I love my daughter. I want her to thrive. I mean, it's heartbreaking to read, really.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Tell you what,
let's
she's
move on.
Love St. Louis Community College. That's what she should love. Right.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong. Yeah, you're right. Good point, Charlie.
Bill McClellan, I want to ask you about John Hayden, the chief of police for the city of St. Louis, who announced this week that he's not going to retire in late February, as he announced. It looks as though the mayor of St. Louis, Tashara Jones, was not too happy with the picks, the two final candidates for police chief that were being recommended by the personnel department, which then went to the public safety director. So there were two candidates. There were two white guys. She was looking for more diversity. It looks like John Hayden has said, okay, I'll stay on as chief given the circumstances. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, and the whole thing is a mess, and it goes to city control. You know, when the state had control, the police board picked a new chief, and it was, you know, I mean, who knew who, and the way it is in life a lot, and all of a sudden city control and the personnel department is supposed to have the say in it, and with the first mayor with the local control, Lyda Cruson, said to the personnel department, okay, let's hire an outside consultant. And they said, okay. And all of a sudden, Richard Frank, the now retired personnel director, when Tashara Jones said, let's hire an outside consultant, he said, no, I'll do this. And so he ends up with Mike Sachs and Larry O'Toole. And I know both fellas, and Larry O'Toole might have at one time been a fine chief, but this is the 21st century. And I think that the mayor ought to be allowed to select a new chief.
Phil, your words are going to have to be the last ones. I'm sorry, because my fault. We are out of time. Had so much fun, I let the clock escape me. So tell you what, we'll cut it off here, but you and I will be joined by Rhonda Ham-Nabrugi, who is the head of the St. Louis Airport Lambert Field, and she's going to join us on Next Up in just a moment.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.